Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Weekly Academics, and you were listening to Faiza Inamdar. So, yes, after a bit of a gap because I was busy, now I am back. And today we're going to start with the 5th chapter of the history section. And this is actually just one podcast chapter because it's quite short. And in this one, we'll be talking about the factors that led to the formation of Muslim League and the aims or objectives of Muslim League. So according to the syllabus, that will complete this chapter about Muslim League. So let's look into it without taking a lot of time. It's quite a small part. It's very easy to understand. There's nothing much to remember. Again, just events and events going on. So let's look into it. First, we'll look into the factors that led to the formation of Muslim League. Now, just for a background, in 1892, an Indian Councils Act was passed by the government, okay? And in 1893, August of 1893, the Central National Muslims Association, who represented the Muslim leaders of Bengal and other provinces. So all these together, the Central National Muslims Association, they prepared a memorandum and presented it to the government. And in this memorandum, they demanded for a due representation of the Muslims in the Central Legislative Council, which was created as per the Indian Councils Act of 1892. Okay. So with this step, certain separatist ideologies started growing. The separation between Hindus and Muslims, these ideologies started growing. Okay, so beginning from this point started certain events that led to the formation of the Muslim League. Okay, so let's look into specifically which were the major events that can be stated as the cause for the formation of Muslim League. So let's look into the first one. Number one is the Hindi-Urdu controversy. Now, in those days, in Uttar Pradesh, all the petitions and formal documents were to be filed in Urdu. The language was supposed to be Urdu. Okay. Because of the history, there were various Muslim leaders who had ruled on this region of the country, on the northern side of the country. Even today, we find a lot of Urdu-speaking population living in the northern parts of India. Right. So, likewise, in those times, Urdu was the official language in that area. So petitions were supposed to be filed only and only in Urdu. Now, this thing hurt the sentiments of Hindus, and they realized this, that no, it should not just be in Urdu, even Hindi should get a recognition enough. So the Hindus, they protested against this practice, and on 8th April 1900, the government pronounced another rule which said that petitions will have to be now entertained even if written in Hindi. So they can be in Urdu as well as in Hindi. Okay. So the demand of the Hindus got fulfilled. Now with this change, the sentiments of the Muslims got hurted. So they started holding protest meetings. And to put down these protest meetings, the Hindus started holding protest meetings, and they held meetings to meet the challenge. So ideologies got separated. The once united country was now at the verge of separating. And with these events going on, the Muslims thought that they need now a proper organization for themselves to represent their interests. Okay. Now, keeping this in mind, let's move on to the second cause. Now, just keep this for reference in your mind because there is a reference to it in the second cause also. So, the second cause is the Aligarh politics. Now, after the death of Sir Syed in 1898, who was the one who was leading the Aligarh movement before. After his death, Sir Syed, after he died, Nawab Mohsin-ul Mulk led the Aligarh movement. Okay. Nawab Mohsin-ul Mulk, he led the Aligarh movement. Now, when the Hindu-Urdu controversy started, Nawab Mohsin-ul Mulk, who was also the secretary of MAO College Trust, he criticized the government a lot with reference to this Hindu-Urdu controversy. So now in UP, the Lieutenant Governor of UP, A. MacDonnell, he asked Nawab Mohsin-ul Mulk to either separate himself from this agitation, from the Aligarh movement, or to resign from the secretaryship of the MAO College Trust. So, considering that he still wanted to be the secretary of MAO College Trust, Nawab Mohsen al-Mulk, he cooled down. He calmed down and he separated himself from the agitation. But it was not just one person leading the agitation, right? There were various other Muslim leaders who were still quite angry with this step. Okay, so they did not calm down. They were continuing with their protests, and in these protests and these meetings, they came up with the proposition and the suggestion for the establishment of a political organization for the Muslims. Okay, that's what happened in the 1900s. Now, moving on to the third cause, which is the anti-partition movement. So during the anti-partition movement, earlier also when we studied partition of Bengal, we saw how the British governors, they went to Bengal and convinced leaders that the new province would be a Muslim province. Okay, keeping that in mind, let's look into the anti-partition movement. So now during the anti-partition movement, various Muslims were holding protest meetings, but as we've studied earlier, the government tried a lot to get the Muslims towards their side. So they held various meetings, they approached the Nawabs and got them convinced, especially Nawab Salimullah. The government got them convinced that the new province would be a Muslim province. So because now Nawab Salimullah was convinced, so he spread this message across Dhaka, across various provinces around Dhaka, and more Muslims of the upper class, they started coming under the influence of the British. They started thinking that, okay, this is in our interest, this is in the Muslim interest, and therefore even some of them were quite happy with the partition because they thought that it would be a Muslim province, right? And even in that case, they felt their interests need more representation, so this got a stamp that they could have their organization for their own. So this Hindu-Urdu controversy, the Aligarh politics, and the anti-partition movement are the three main causes for the formation of Muslim League. Now let's look into the formation and their objectives. So now after all these causes, now the Muslim leaders felt quite happy and satisfied, and in December 1906, the delegates from various provinces, they assembled in Dhaka due to a conference, which was the Muslim Educational Conference, and making good use of this opportunity, taking good advantage of this opportunity, Nawab Salimullah, he proposed the formation of a central organization that would work in interests of the Muslims, for the political and other interests of the Muslims. And with this proposal got accepted, and with the acceptance of this proposal, the All India Muslim League was formally founded on 30th December 1906. 30th December 1906, post the partition. Okay, and the first session was the Dhaka session, which was presided over by Nawab Salimullah. Now this was the first session, but their constitution, the constitution of the Muslim League, how would they go, their rules and their ideologies and stuff. So their constitution was framed in 1907 in Karachi, and the first session after the formation of the constitution, after the adoption of the constitution, happened in December 1908 in Amritsar, and it was chaired by Sayyid Ali Imam. So there was one session before constitution, that was the Dhaka session, presided over by Nawab Salimullah. Then the constitution was adopted in 1907 at Karachi, and then there was the next session, first session after adoption of constitution, in December 1908 in Amritsar under the chairmanship of Sayyid Ali Imam. Now, hoping that this is clear, I'm pretty sure that the formation part is clear. Now let's look into the objectives of the Muslim League. There are three main objectives of the Muslim League that they had. Okay, they had certain objectives for their own, like the INC had, right? So let's look into their objectives. Now the first objective is to promote a feeling of loyalty among Indian Muslims, a feeling of loyalty towards the British government. They wanted to promote a feeling of loyalty towards the British government among the Indian Muslims. They wanted to remove all the misconceptions that may have risen because of owing to the interests of the government, and promote loyalty. So that's the first one. Second, they wanted to protect political and other rights of the Muslims and place their needs and aspirations before the government in a mild, moderate language. Okay. Third is to protect the rise of any feeling of hostility between Muslims and any other communities. That's the third one. To maintain good relations between Muslims and other communities. But in this third one, they made sure that the other two clauses were not compromised, okay, without adversely affecting the other two. So therefore, their objectives were: number one, promote a feeling of loyalty among Indian Muslims towards the British government and remove all misconceptions. Number two, to protect the political and other rights of the Muslims and place their needs and aspirations before the government. And third, to prevent the rise of any feeling of hostility between Muslims and other communities without adversely affecting the other two objectives. Okay, so with this, we're done with the causes, the formation, and the objectives of Muslim League, and we're actually done with the 5th chapter as well, according to the APC publication. And in the next podcast, I'll soon come back with the next podcast, which will be on the topic, on the 6th chapter, which would deal with Lucknow Pact. Okay, which would deal with Lucknow Pact. So I guess this is quite clear. This quite easy part, quite smaller part, very easy to understand. Nothing much to remember though. And until then, if you want to listen to something beautiful, soothing, peaceful, relaxing, just go on YouTube and search Your Life in My Voice. They are podcasts made by Dr. Sabiha and all are available on YouTube. And until then, do like my podcast, share it with all your friends, put down all your feedbacks, comments, any doubts if you have in the comments section, and subscribe the channel Faiza Inamdar to get all updates on all the podcasts that I put up. And if you want me to make any specific content or deal with certain specific chapters, you can always put it down in the comment section or DM me at weekly.academics. Until then, you're listening to Faiza Inamdar at Weekly Academics. Stay home, stay safe, be healthy. Bye-bye.